Hi Booktube, it's Amy, and I'm back with some more entries from the Journal of Emily Shore. If you haven't heard my readings up until this point, we are 55 pages in. You can go to the Emily Shore playlist on my channel and start from the beginning. Published in 1891. This is the journal of a teenage girl living in the United Kingdom in the 1830s. And we are in the spring of 1833 here. So here on May 29th, 1833. Another still more curious coincidence has taken place. I was reading in the Architecture of Birds a fact that I never knew before. The tomtits with their beaks excavate holes in trees as a nest. Just at this moment, Mackworth called out, "Oh, Emily, do you know I saw today a tomtit hollowing a hole in a branch with his beak? He was quite topsy-turvy." May 30th, Thursday. A and I found some curious caterpillars' nests on the walnut tree. There were only two sorts. One was done by a caterpillar an inch long, of a greenish white, without hairs and not pretty. This creature rolls up part of a leaf and sews it down with cotton in a kind of delicate web, or sometimes bends down the leaf in a half and spins some cotton across it just near the bend, so as to hold the two halves firm together. In this place it lies snug, probably about to become a chrysalis. The other sort is of the same color, but only 1/4 of an inch long. It forms its habitation by fastening the edges of two leaves together, quite flat, laid over one another, which indeed the other sometimes does. I gathered several leaves to see what butterflies they will produce. June 1st, Saturday. At about 7:30, the whole party took a delightful walk across several successive fields sloping in a hill, at whose top runs a continued avenue of shady and beautiful lime trees. Arthur, who is an excellent leaper, and the gentlemen employed themselves in leaping over gates, hedges, and ditches, and got 2 or 3 falls on account of the slipperiness of the ground. I found a plant of the Solanium dulcamara, or woody nightshade, which is in bloom. It is poisonous. And there's a footnote here. The berries are so, but I do not know if the rest of the plant is. So the berries of that plant are certainly poisonous. Mr. Taylor, hearing this, chewed a leaf, and Lord Desert did the same, with a flower, swallowing all the juice to see if they were poisoned. Mr. Taylor was still more foolish, for he resolved to eat the belladonna, or deadly nightshade, of which every part is a deadly poison, and it grows about the place where he lives. June 2nd, Sunday. And evidently these men survived. Perhaps they had a bit of a stomach ache, but evidently they survived eating these plants. June 2nd, Sunday. In coming from church, I found a caterpillar, a very handsome one. As for the legs, I could not observe them, because the creature persisted in rolling itself up, and was teased when I tried to unroll them. Lord Desart would call this beautiful insect very handsome for a caterpillar, and I cannot bear caterpillars, because they give one a disagreeable idea, and crawl disgustingly. I grant this may be true with him. Perhaps he may have a physical infirmity which makes him dislike this order of creature. Mr. Taylor goes farther. He called it a beast, and screamed and moaned when he allowed it to crawl on him. Sir George Baker alone duly appreciated its beauty without any malicious and insinuating remarks. So these gentlemen are not fans of caterpillars, although apparently they will eat potentially deadly plants for the sport of it. June 5th, Wednesday. Before the parlor dinner, Mamma saw a black and white wagtail pick up a great worm. Presently a grey one approached and quietly took it out of his mouth. Shortly after, another grey one came up for it, and a quarrel ensued, which ended in the original possessor regaining his property. At 7 o'clock I went out into the garden for a little while, and saw on a laurel tree in the laurel hedge a sweet little robin singing beautifully. On the same tree were a chaffinch and his wife, the former singing loudly and boldly, the latter looking on in mute approbation of her dear consort. At length she became wearied of doing nothing, and resolving that her mate should alone adorn the tree, drove off the robin. He, poor fellow, flew off to another part of the laurel hedge, hoping to sing in quiet. There he found another chaffinch, probably leagued with the first. At all events, the next minute he attacked the unfortunate robin, who in his flight flew a few yards off the ground and whisked by only a few inches from me. He took refuge among some thick branches and looked much terrified. Meanwhile, the two chaffinches kept answering each other from different trees. June 7th, Friday. Mackworth, in returning from bathing, found a curious parasitical plant, the Orbobonche major, or great broomrape. It grows on the roots of plants, especially of the Papilionaceous tribe. This one was growing on gorse. It is about 10 inches high without leaves and having a thick, solid stem over which are scattered dry scales about half an inch long. The stem is unbranched. At the top is a close spike of flowers, which are almost an inch in length, coarse and rough. The summit of the pistil is heart-shaped and yellow. The whole plant, flowers, stems, and scales, is of a purplish rusty brown. I went immediately to look up the plant and took up the plant. I do not know whether it will live, as I was of course obliged to break off its root from the root of the gorse. Its own root is whitish, tough, and woody. June 8th, Saturday. The lark has now confirmed hatred of the goldfinch and screams if he even sees its cage. At the same time, he is more tame and gentle to us. He always walks under the table after breakfast to pick up the crumbs we have dropped and eats out of our hand, especially when he is in his cage. When anyone approaches, he opens his beak very wide for a fly. If none is brought, he looks sadly disappointed, for he loves flies. I suspect he does not like Mackworth, which is not wonderful, considering the teasing and frightening he has received from that quarter. For when Emma tempted to give him a fly, he flew at, pecked him, and pursued him for 2 or 3 yards. He also attacked me and tugged furiously at my finger. But as soon as Em was out of the room, he became quiet and ate gently out of my hand. He then walked into his cage and grew very dainty, for he took a dislike to great flies and pecked us if we brought them. But he eats little ones readily enough, nor would he, except once, be cheated by being presented with a bit of a large fly as a little fly. We have been watching the birds a great deal today. I chiefly observed the redstart, which is very tame and hops from tree to tree close to us. He is a most beautiful bird. The hen, which was the one I watched, has a grey back and a purplish cast, a tail black above and red beneath, a deep black neck and throat. The crown of the head is white, the breast and the stomach red. She constantly utters a soft, sweet note exactly like tweet, tweet, or wheat, I suppose. It's spelled H-W-E-E-T, so I suppose the H and the W would make sort of a wheat sound. The chaffinch, tiresome aping bird, imitated this and very successfully, except that it was harsher. He took us in finely once. He likewise heard a singular noise between a sneeze and a hiss and the sound of a saw. It was evidently made by a bird, for when we examined the place whence it proceeded, I found only one twig on which it must have been perched, shaking up and down while all the rest were quiet. Louisa afterwards ascertained that it was made by a little bird, which I have seen before. It has a tail which he wags frequently, and which is of a fiery red underneath. But more than all this, Arabella's prying eyes have discovered, fixed on a branch of a nut tree overhanging our garden or near it, a beautiful nest of a chaffinch, small, neat, and round, apparently formed of grey moss and twigs and lined with feathers. The hen was sitting on it and allowed me to thrust my face within a foot of her before she would fly off. I shall take great care that she is not molested, and I shall pet her by daily feeding her with bread, and her little ones when they are hatched. June 9th. There is a great variety of songs in our garden, the loud, vain chirp of the chaffinch, the sweet, liquid warbling of the robin, the soft and mellow note of the blackbird, the cooing of the wood pigeon, and above all, the deep, rich, and varied song of the thrush, who will sing for above an hour together without intermission. June 13th, Thursday. I have discovered why the lark sometimes attacks me so violently. It is because I wear a different frock from which he has become accustomed to see me in. This shows a great deal of observation and intelligence. June 14th, Friday. When I had done the work of planting my mulleins, I came indoors and brought some flies to the lark, but he, instead of eating them, flew at me in wrath and bit me hard. At length it occurred to me that this might be the consequence of my hands being dirty from gardening. I accordingly went up and washed them. When I came down, the lark was all gentleness and quietly ate my flies. June 26th. I, with Arabella and Mackworth, took a delightful walk down near the cow pasture, through Lunis's farm, amongst several fields, brooks, and thickets, all filled with herbs and flowers. We saw an immense number of mares' tails, of a prodigious size, above a yard in height sometimes, and with a very thick stem, jointed and leafy, the leaves being 2 little stalks. The stem consists of 2 tubes, one within the other, and is either black or pale green. The young shoots just coming up are most curious looking. There are 2 sorts of Hapyrus, mare's tail, withering and galpine. And there's an asterisk here. Apparently there is a Sir E. Smith kind too, so 3. Only mention 1. The other is, according to Rousseau, not much known. The first I am well acquainted with. It is very much smaller than this, which may possibly be only a large variety of it. But then I have never seen the 2 sorts together, and they are certainly very different, so I hope this is the rare kind. But unfortunately I know of no book which describes it, for Rousseau only just mentions its existence. June 28th. The lark is a most engaging and interesting little bird, though he has quite got over his ill temper and never pecks, but he still will not eat from my hand if I have got on a different frock. As for the goldfinch, he continues merry, happy, imprudent, and affected without any variation. And I think we'll leave it there for this reading today. So we've read about 5 pages. We've got 1 more entry left in June, and then we'll be into July of 1833. This particular goldfinch does not seem, well suited to be someone's pet. And I think even in an earlier passage, he sort of lamented this idea of having certain types of birds as pets, given the size of cages, and how unsuited they are for captivity. But as I said, we will leave it there, and I'll be back again soon with some more from the Journal of Emily Shore.